Aloha! Coming from our nation's capital in Washington, D.C., I want to welcome you to my show, Conversations with Kai, where every month I sit down with national elected leaders and subject matter experts to discuss issues important to Hawaii and our nation. Today, it is my distinct privilege to be joined by the 11th United States Secretary of Veterans Affairs, the Honorable Denis McDonough. Before coming to the VA, Secretary McDonough served as the 26th White House Chief of Staff under President Barack Obama, working across the cabinet to develop and execute critical U.S. priorities in national security and domestic policy. Secretary McDonough believes deeply that it is our shared, sacred obligation, to quote the Secretary himself, to uphold our promises to our veterans, whether they came home decades ago or days ago. Mr. Secretary, it's great to see you again, and thank you for joining my show. The people of Hawaii are honored to have you here with me today, and so why don't you take a moment to introduce yourself to Hawaii and discuss some of the priorities and vision that you have as its new secretary under this administration. Aloha.
Aloha. Nice to see you, Kai.
Nice to see you.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me. It's great to be with you. So when President Biden asked me to serve as Secretary of Veterans Affairs, he said very simply what he expected of me, which is that he expected me to be an advocate, the chief advocate for all veterans in this country. And by that, he means all veterans. Mm-hmm. And when I think of Hawaii and the massive contributions that Hawaii has made to the country of the United States, I think of people like you or people like Danny and Noe. Yep. And the thousands and thousands of Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islanders who have served us as veterans over the course of the country's history. And so when he says be an advocate for all veterans, he means for Native Hawaiians, for Asian American Hawaiians, for Pacific Islanders. And so that's what I'll intend to do. And that's what I've been doing. And I know we'll get into some of the specifics, but it's a massive honor to be able to do it, and it's great that I've met you so early in my tenure here. I'm a big fan of Hawaii itself. I was just about to tell you that I have only been there once. It was my former boss. We landed early one Christmas morning, as he always did with his family. Yeah. I proceeded to spend 10 days in a hotel room working on terrorism, and my wife and kids got a chance to witness the beauty of Hawaii.
Did you get a chance to work out with him at Kaneohe Marine Corps Base or
did.
go up the Lanikai Pillbox trail hike? I know the president loved to do that with his family.
Played some hoops with him. Also with some Marines.
I'm sure some golf too.
I didn't play any golf with him because by the time he was heading out for golf, I think all the work was starting for me.
Right on. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself, your previous background, and your life's journey, what brought you to this point, and what best prepares you to be the Secretary of the VA?
Well, it's a great question. Look, I come from maybe a place as different as can be when it comes to weather and environment from Hawaii. I come from Minnesota. I grew up in a family with 11 kids, so I have 10 brothers and sisters. And I think one of the things that really prepares me to be a leader is the fact that I grew up every day trying to make my way, build alliances, figure out problems with my brothers and sisters. And then, so I came out here to go to graduate school at Georgetown, where I know one of your staffers went to school, Serena, and I got my first job after grad school here on Capitol Hill. Lo and behold, I worked here for a handful of years, and lo and behold, I was working for the majority leader on the day of the attacks of 9/11. Wow. And I was his national security advisor at the time, worked on the authorization for the use of military force that we still have in place now, notwithstanding your all's vote last week. So I've really been, since 9/11, involved in a lot of decisions that sent young men and women like you to war. Yep. Whether it was with the Senate Majority Leader and then in the White House with President Obama, first as Deputy National Security Advisor and then as White House Chief of Staff. very involved in these questions of war and peace. And so when the president, that is to say President Biden, invited me to serve in this job as Veterans Secretary, I jumped at the chance, at the honor, because I can now give back to those amazing vets like yourself and those of generations before them who have given so much. And by the way, carried out policies that I've played some small part in putting in place. So if I can use my skills, my experience as a kind of an actor and a policymaker to ensure that our vets get world-class care, timely access to benefits, I'm going to do it. So that's why I'm in the slot I'm in.
You mentioned 9/11, and I had a brief opportunity to speak with the president a few days after he announced his decision to end the war in Afghanistan and bring our troops home. And I told the president that I commissioned in February of 2001, and I was in Air Force pilot training on 9/11 in Columbus, Mississippi. And so for all but about 7 months of my now over 20-year military career, we've been a nation at war. And I thank the president for his decision to bring our troops home, to bring this war to an end. And I have had a chance to serve in OIF and OEF many times, and there's many service members that never came home, and their families, thousands of them have empty places at dinner tables and Thanksgiving and Christmas, and so it's been a real difficult war for our country. So let's talk about veterans, and I want to
let's just say one, just to spend 1 minute on that. When you think about, you say so first of all, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
I think not only about your service, but I think about your wife, your daughters, the time that they gave up with their dad, with their husband. But you also underscore that there's so many of our troopers who didn't come home. And I think I have this correct, which is we have 68 service members from Guam, from Hawaii, who paid the ultimate sacrifice over those years. And so we can't ever forget that. Can't ever forget that.
And we won't.
Exactly.
Now let's talk about veterans in the state of Hawaii and the congressional district I represent. So I'll just lay the groundwork for you, Mr. Secretary. Hawaii is home to approximately 120,000 veterans and their families, which makes up 10% of our state's entire population. It's higher than the national average. Hawaii is home to 2 congressional districts. Of course, the 1st congressional district, represented by my colleague, Congressman Ed Case, which includes approximately 62,000 veterans, and the 2nd congressional district, which I represent, which includes approximately 56,000 veterans. And so my question to you is, this is the last year that has been very, very difficult because of COVID-19. It's taken a toll on our veterans and our country. And it's been a very physical and emotional and difficult time. So what is the VA doing to help our veterans get through these difficult times and the COVID-19 pandemic?
Great question. And so the first thing we're doing is we're making sure that our vets are in a position to handle the health challenges that come from COVID-19. First and foremost, we want to make sure that we get access to vaccine for every one of those tens of thousands of vets in your district and in Mr. Case's district. Not only that, but we want to make sure that spouses of veterans, caregivers for veterans, and even kids of veterans 16 and older can get vaccine. So what I'd say to everybody watching this show is, if you haven't yet had access to the vaccine and you're a vet, you're a spouse of a vet, child of a vet, caregiver for a vet, contact us at va.gov/COVID vaccine, and we'll get you scheduled. We'll even come bring it to you. So that's the first thing. The second thing is we're also investing in making sure that we're prepared to care for those who did contract COVID and who might be confronting challenges as a result, and what we call long COVID. VA is the national leader in research on long COVID. That's thanks to the support that you've given us, including in the American Rescue Plan. to ensure that we have money to invest in research and understanding that. Third, you gave us about $17 billion more in healthcare assistance because we anticipate that more vets will be seeking care at the end of the pandemic. Lastly, we're making sure that vets have support, especially vets who have confronted problems because of the soft economy, have support on things like rental assistance, on mortgage assistance for your house, on making sure that if you lost your job because of the pandemic, another thing you gave us is a veterans rapid retraining program. And all you have to do is show that you lost your job due to the pandemic, and we'll make sure you get a training stipend, training on high demand jobs, and then we'll make sure that the group that trains you doesn't get fully paid until you're in that high demand job. So those are some of the things that we're doing, and frankly we're doing it because you've given us the resources to be able to do it.
One of the things I'm most proud of just in the last 6 months that I've had a chance to serve in Congress is working together across the aisle on the vet tech bill. And getting that through the House, working together with Chair Takano and Congresswoman Miller Meeks, and getting that over into the Senate. And that's obviously an opportunity for veterans to get that specialized type of vocational training to help them in the workforce.
Perfect example, well-proven training program with some kind of small investment of assistance in those vets. We see, as you know better than anybody, astounding progress. And that's because in our vets we have a proven force that through thick and thin shows up to work, watches out for their teammates, insists on high quality, wakes up every day trying to get that much better. And so the president, working with you all here on Capitol Hill, is bounded and determined to ensure that we make investments in our vets, since not only have they given us a massive amount to date, now applying those skills they have to our economy, we're going to see that they continue to give to this country going forward.
Hawaii is geographically isolated. It's a challenging place to administer services, and so I just want to ask a question about telehealth. You know, everyone wants to see a doctor face to face, but telehealth is a great way to access healthcare, to get the services people need, to reduce the cost of seeing a doctor. We need to invest in rural broadband infrastructure so that we can provide those telehealth services. But what are your thoughts on the VA and how it might be adapting and modernizing its infrastructure and to take advantage of the technology through telehealth services?
It's a great question. So, I mean, you know, obviously Hawaii far better than I do. But as I understand it, given the layout of that majestic state, sometimes to travel to one of our 7 clinics or any of our other facilities
Very challenging.
can be as many as 12 hours.
Yep.
And so video health and telehealth end up being really important. We've seen since the start of the pandemic a dramatic escalation in the use of telehealth. What I think a lot of the vets in Hawaii know, but is not broadly understood, is VA has traditionally been a real innovator in the use of technology for care. That's particularly true on what we call Vet Video Connect, VVC. Just from February 2020 to February 2021, we saw an increase in the use of video telehealth appointments increase by about 2,000%. So we had as many as 20,000 appointments a day across the enterprise. And so what does that get you? First, it gets you good, solid health outcomes. Second, it allows a vet to do that from the comfort of his or her home. They don't have to traverse those 12 hours. Third, it ensures that we stay in touch with our vets. So increasingly what we found during the course of the pandemic is that isolation feeds, as it would in all of us. anxiety or even depression in some cases. So using that technology has allowed us to counter some of the mental health impacts of the pandemic. So the challenge for us now is to let's solidify the lessons learned of the pandemic. We've gotten to this new plateau. Let's ensure we can get to the next plateau, even as we're investing in the in-person care that's ultimately going to be really critical. You'll be surprised the things we can do by video connect. Physical therapy.
Right.
We can do all sorts of things. We can check your blood pressure, check your vitals over video connect. In fact, we've had instances of vets using technology to flag for us a concern that they wouldn't have known otherwise had they not been connected to us through technology. But there are some things like surgery, for example, we're going to have to continue to provide in service. Last thing is I can't underscore enough the importance of telehealth, video health to our mental health performance for our vets. There's going to be demand for mental health care services. What I'd urge our vets out there is take advantage of this. Please, we're here, our professionals in our vet centers, in our med centers, and you can draw on the best mental health professionals from across the enterprise using that technology.
In Hawaii, we just think about the VA Pacific Island healthcare system as only Hawaii, but it actually covers the entire Pacific. And you have Guam and American Samoa and our freely associated states and those veterans that come to Hawaii. And so we have the Sparky Matsunaga VA Medical Center, which is co-located with Triple Army Medical Center up there on Oahu. We have vet centers throughout the state. We have CBOX. We have the soon-to-be-built Daniel Keakaka Veteran Center. That's going to be a super CBOC there. And so I'm excited about some of the things that we're doing. We also have veterans homes. On a recent visit to Kauai and their CBOC and a subsequent visit to the Pacific Missile Range facility at Barking Sands, I learned that audiology is a treatment and a specialty that's in high demand on the island of Kauai, and that the local CBOC there can't provide this specialized type of care. So I talked to the base commander at PMRF, and I talked to the CBOC director, and I'm like, how can we work together to provide those opportunities where possibly the military and the VA can partner together on specialized care or even overall patient care, prescriptions through some of the local pharmacies that exist at those VA hospitals, military hospitals. Any thoughts on how to create a working relationship between the active duty military's healthcare system and the VA's?
Look, I think it's a great idea, and this is one thing that we'll be looking at this year in the course of our review of our infrastructure, including our infrastructure and what we call the AIR Commission. This is a commission passed by Congress to have us look at our assets and infrastructure. So it's the Asset Infrastructure Review Commission. We'll take a hard look at it there. We've got a great example where a VA facility co-located with a Navy facility in Chicago is demonstrating this jointness between DOD and VA.
That's what I'm talking
to
about.
provide world-class care. I know that Senator Sullivan and Senator Murkowski are looking at the same thing as they look at the military and VA facilities in Alaska. And I think we should be looking at the same thing. We already have some ways where throughout the Pacific healthcare system, we can get some limited access for our vets to Tripler and to other facilities. The question is, how do we expand that? How do we draw lessons from that? And this is going to be a real priority for us, which is to make maximum use of the infrastructure that we do have so that we can continue to innovate, focus on research, education, and training while we're giving our veterans world-class care. Co-locating that with DOD makes a lot of sense. One last thing I'll say about this is we've recently hired a career senior executive service leader by the name of Vivian Hudson to lead our Pacific initiative.
Great.
And so she's looking at precisely these questions. She's my senior advisor for the Pacific strategy. I'd love for her to come sit down with you and talk through how we're thinking about care across the islands, given how critical vets from the islands have been for us.
Fantastic. Look forward to working with her. Let's talk about military sexual assault.
Yeah.
Important issue in our country. And, you know, in 2018, at least 20,000 service members were sexually assaulted. In 2020, the Department of Defense received over 6,000 reports of sexual assault. Sexual assault remains an underreported crime, with only 36% of sexual assaults actually being reported and only 1% ending in conviction. Now, I know this is a top issue for President Biden, for Secretary of Defense Austin, within our active duty military. But I'd like to focus on those who have left the military, but are still dealing with the traumas of sexual assault. On a recent visit to the Maui Vet Center, I was shocked to learn that the top issue that they deal with is sexual assault, and it's male on male rapes that happen. And often it's ones that went underreported while they were in the military. They never reported it, but it has come back to haunt them as veterans. And so they've sought treatment at veteran centers. What is the VA doing to help veterans who are still dealing with the consequences of sexual assault during their time in the military?
So let me just underscore the point you made. In the past 10 years, there's been a 151% increase in the number of female veterans and a 95% increase in the number of male veterans receiving outpatient care through VA for military sexual trauma. So those numbers are astounding. And as you say, those are only acknowledged and reported cases. We know that these are underreported. And so what we're doing is a number of things. We have a number of options for our vets to come seek care. One, you highlighted the vet centers, where every vet can have 100% confidence in the confidentiality of the visit to that facility.
Right.
Their record will be segregated, including among active duty. They can get care there, and their record will be segregated from the rest of their record. So that will be a confidential record for you and your provider only to understand or to know about. Second is, we're also making sure that we're providing care through our medical centers and through our C-Box. And we're seeing demand for such care increase, as I just said. So we're dramatically increasing the training for our providers there to understand how to recognize particular forms of trauma related to MST. The last thing is, we also want to make the experience whereby our vets come to seek benefits for service-connected disability, including, for example, PTS that they suffer as a result of MST. And we're dramatically increasing the training for our benefits providers to ensure that those survivors of MST, when they come, they actually are not forced to relive the trauma or be re-traumatized. They actually get care, whether that's mental health care, whether that's physical health care, or whether that's the benefits they've earned. We're training, we're ready, we're open, and I want to say to everybody out there, if you've encountered this, come see us. We'll take care of you, and we'll protect you, your privacy, and we'll make sure you get the service and the care that you've earned.
Thank you for that. As we look towards the future, the VA will be taking care of more and more veterans who fought in the Middle East versus our veterans that fought in the Vietnam War, the Korean War, World War II. Those veterans bring different challenges, PTSD, back-to-back deployments, 20 years of war. In closing, could you share your thoughts on how the VA is changing to meet the needs of our veterans of tomorrow? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, one is, and I should have said this before on the last question, but Secretary of Defense Austin is somebody I've worked together with now for the last 10 or 12 years very, very closely on the wars in the Middle East. When he was in Iraq, when he was at CENTCOM, very focused on these issues. This is a serious priority for him, not only for his active duty, but for those guys who are with him today but will be with us tomorrow. So he and I are working very closely together to make sure that this is the military sexual trauma is the #1 issue on our joint agenda of things we work together. Now, then looking at how we care for vets of today and tomorrow with the signature service connected conditions like TBI, like PTS, is a shared priority as well. Shared research, shared investment, and then shared flagging of the kinds of things that we see with our vets force. The third thing I'd say about that is we're talking directly to veterans. We have an ability now using our trust scores where we're asking our vets, are you getting the care you're looking for? What is the care you're looking for? And you can see this up on our website at va.gov/trust, where we put up our scores of here's what our veterans think about the service we're giving them. It's important that we have their trust, but that trust comes from us responding to their concerns and their needs. Mm-hmm. So when you say, how are we keeping an eye on what we're going to need to know for the future? Here's how we're doing it. We're talking to our vets about what it is that they're witnessing, what is it that they and their families, their survivors, their caregivers, and in some cases their survivors need. We're going to find that out by continuing to talk directly to them.
Yeah, fantastic. You know, as we wind down this conversation that's gone rather quickly,
it has.
I want to give you an opportunity to address the veterans of Hawaii directly, or a spouse in Hawaii, and you know, what message you want to leave with them as the leader of the VA and the secretary of the VA. Talk directly to people of Hawaii.
You're great to do that, Kai. And what I'd say is our message is twofold. First is thank you. And it's obvious to us the huge sacrifice that you and your families have made over these many generations now, where you've fought to keep us free. Some, including our Native Hawaiians and our Asian American and Pacific Islander vets, sometimes, as with the 442nd, fighting to protect freedoms that you are not even granted at home, to protect the rest of us. So we thank you. The second is we're here for you. If you're not getting what you need, that's a bug. That's not designed. You got to let us know. We're here for you. I'm under orders from the president to be your #1 advocate. I can only do that if I know what you need, so holler at us.
Well, thank you so much, Secretary McDonough. Mahalo nui loa for taking the time to talk story with me, and most importantly, the people and the veterans back home in Hawaii on so many important issues. I'm assured that under your leadership, our veterans will be better equipped to transition back into civilian life and have greater access to resources and assistance along the way. Thank you so much.
Mahalo.
Aloha.